So we're taking that deep breath in. Oh, just coming back to this moment, grounding after that joyous song. Breathing in and letting go. Simply honoring that whatever happened during the day or during the week no longer exists. What's going to happen after this moment also does not exist. We simply just breathe into this moment. Into the here and now. With a heart full of gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, not sure if the listeners at home can listen, but Snow Angel is barking at the moment. She likely heard a dog. That's her trigger if she hears some barking going off. Probably not picking too much up on the audio, though. So welcome, y'all. This is a beautiful moment of just sinking into this piece and acknowledging that any external sounds just really help us drift deeper and deeper into our meditative state of self-awareness, of mindfulness, and of the utmost patience. So, we're on mastery of thought. I don't have my book with me, but Living Peace right here. So, based off of Living Peace, Essential Teachings for Enlightenment in the 21st Century, for the past month and a half, we've gone through mastery of thought, and then mastery of impulse, and now we're on to mastery of emotion. And so what's cool about this progression system is with mastery of thought, you kind of thought as the building block of reality, because your thoughts and your beliefs alter your reactions, they alter your behavior, and your reactions and your behavior then sculpt your reality. So if you can't get your thoughts in alignment, you're going to have a rough time. Then we move on to mastery of impulse, right? Who has impulses? Who is an impulsive creature, either with reacting or maybe you have some slight addictions, soft or hard addictions, we don't judge. So whichever one, we just have these tendencies of addiction, impulsiveness, reaction, or even compulsions. And so all of that kind of fits really nicely on top of mastery of thought, because if you can start to catch that, if you can start having self-awareness, what ends up happening is you start to create a little bit of that pause right before you react. And then you start to increase that pause. Maybe it's just 2 seconds, and then 5 seconds, and then 10 seconds. I talk about in my book when I was overcoming my major OCD habits, I would sit on my hands and just breathe. And I say, okay, this moment, this urge is temporary. This urge is temporary. This urge is temporary. Because I had these compulsions of needing to do things in sets of 3. And if I didn't, I would freak the F out. And I would want to pull my hair out. It would turn into a panic attack. And so that was, my compulsion was almost like my odd way of having control over my life, even though it made me feel out of control. And so to overcome not only that, but social anxiety and my depression, anytime I felt those hot, heavy emotions or impulses come over me, I'd sit on my hands and I would breathe. I'm in control. I'm the master of my mind. I'm the master of my thoughts. I'm the master of my mind. I'm the master of my thoughts. This moment is going to pass. This moment is going to pass. Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. And guess what? Lo and behold, a year of doing that, it worked. And then to this day, I don't need any medications. While previously, when I was a teenager, the doctors said, the psychiatrist said, I would need medication for the rest of my life to function as a normal adult. And so again, I'm not saying this is everyone's experience. And sometimes medication is very beneficial for a lot of people. But in this situation, it was interesting that how these principles of mindfulness and self-mastery and self-control actually was able to shift my brain around, shift my awareness, because all my panic attacks, all my depression was coming from my uncontrolled thoughts. The stories I kept reliving every single day. I was a negative Nancy. I'll tell you what. There was this short little window when I was a teenager, preteen, because I had gone through so much pain and peer abuse. Eventually, it really started seeping into me, being called an abomination for the 1,000th time, or go kill yourself for the 1,000th time. It was very, very intense. And so I just kind of developed this belief that no one's happy, that happiness is an illusion. And so if you believe that no one's happy, or the world is an effed up place, or that happiness is an illusion, then of course you're going to start creating a belief system that then shifts the way you're interacting with the world around you. And then I found out about The Secret, and I started watching a lot of Oprah and started reading Buddhism and all types of spiritualities when I was 15. And I'm like, you know what? These Buddhists, they got something going on there. they got this peace thing. And because I hadn't met anyone up to that point that embodied peace, I had to use, these people I was reading about, these monks that literally had this inner peace. I'm like, okay, that's possible. And so then I shifted it and I said, you know what? This is the reality I want to cultivate. This is the reality I want to cultivate. Boom, year later, off everything cold turkey, and then completely shifted my life around to where emotionally I was at peace. Emotionally, I was happy. I actually became like the happiest person at the school where people would comment on me all the time. So it's funny how it was like it completely did this complete shift. And so I share this story because we're going into mastery of emotion today. And I really want to honor that. I'm sure every single one of you in this room, or those of you listening at home or wherever you're listening from, you probably struggle with emotions from time to time, don't you? It could be a little bit of grief or depression. It could be stress, anxiety. It could be anger. It could be impatience. It could be anything. It doesn't matter what emotional, where you fall at on that spectrum. But we'll just put it out there and say, it doesn't really feel that great, does it? When you fall off that bandwagon, or you fall off the wagon of happiness, you fall off the wagon of peace, and then you're kind of in the mud. You're just like, what the hell is happening? And it's almost like you're walking through mud. Who's felt that way emotionally before, where it's just like it's a rough day and it's like you're just slugging through it? Well, the good news, the happy news, I could just tell some people watching this at some point and be like, he's saying this, but it is true that a lot of it is self-created. And a lot of times as a therapist, because I do a lot of coaching work, a lot of traditional Western therapy, they disagree with me when I approach this to my clients. But when I say it is self-created, I do not validate people's emotions. If you're caught up in this web, I will point it out and I will say that this is self-created. And it's stemming from your psychology. It's stemming from this repeated thought pattern you continue to think. And so I've helped so many people over the years with this, and it's worked. It's worked with major addictions. It's worked with suicidality. It has worked with teenagers that have been self-harming themselves. And it's beautiful because we want to acknowledge that the pain exists. Because if you're feeling pain, emotional pain, it feels real, doesn't it? So it is real. It is of this and that teaching. It's not of this or that teaching. When I say it's self-created, I'm not validating that it's real. But what I'm validating, or what I'm trying to direct the attention to, is that you are recreating it every single day of your life based upon your neural pathways of these patterns, of these thought patterns that you have thought repeatedly again and again and again and again and again and again, just like little Alaric. Just bang that drum every single day. So much so that when my parents would be like, hey, do you want to go do this fun thing? I'd just be in the dark corner like leave me be. I'm in my dark place. That was my life for a short while. Bless my parents' souls. They made it through. But it's because I had these thoughts and I kept thinking them again and again and again. And then I had these addictions and these compulsions and these impulses that kept reinforcing them. And so those impulses, those reactions and those thoughts, when those two things are combined, it creates your emotional realm. Because life itself is neutral. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's not even good, it's not right. It doesn't matter what it's just a neutral landscape. And then we have this mind, this beautiful mind that's often controlled by the ego, and we're creating this mental overlay with our likes and our dislikes. I had a lot of dislikes back then, hot damn. And then we have it with, when you have likes or dislikes, then all of a sudden you start to compartmentalize them and what's good and what's bad, because generally if you don't like something, you're like, oh, that's stupid or that's bad, especially as a teenager. And then that develops into an adulthood. And then you might be 50 years old and you're just like, Jesus, I still have all these opinions about life. And it stems from early on when I just didn't like something. But in actuality, it's just not my cup of tea. But here I've been judging it for so long. And then I make other people feel bad about it that do like these things. So you create this discriminating mind, which is the ego. You create this discrimination in your mind between the duality of life, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. And bless your hearts for those of you who grew up in a religious upbringing. And then you might feel that guilt as well. Who has felt guilt? And it probably came from either cultural or spiritual upbringing, because it could be either or. You know, and it could even be politically as well. But a lot of times we're brought up in this system of saying this is the right way, this is the wrong way. And if you do this, if you go this path, then you should feel guilt and you need to confess, or you need to shift your awareness. Who has been judged by a parent before about a choice that you were doing that actually was not harming anyone, but it was wrong and you were a bad boy or bad girl? And it was just because you liked something that they didn't like. And who's accidentally did that to someone themselves? Mm-hmm. Think about that for a moment. That we then get mistreated in that way. And then all of a sudden we accidentally become that person that mistreats others based off of their likes and their dislikes. And so we develop that discriminating mindset in every area of life. And all of it going back, it stems from that we have these thoughts in our head that we think consistently that become self-validating belief systems. Write that down. Self-validating belief systems. And that's why when I work with people one-on-one or in group settings, I don't validate your shit. It's not useful because the whole world has been validating you. Self-validating belief systems. And here's the funny thing. Again, this may not work for everyone, but at least from the 10 years of working with hundreds of people, I've seen it consistently happen again and again and again. And again, we have to approach it from a place of compassion. We have to approach it from a place of acknowledgement. And we have to approach it from a place of gentleness, especially within ourselves. That when people actually hear something true, you can feel it in your body, can't you? When you're told, when you're like, wow, when I actually have created this feeling and this thought every single day of my life, I've repeated it again and again and again, and I can see clearly now how when you think these thoughts repeatedly, it then changes your behaviors, it changes your words, it changes your reactions. And those words, those behaviors, and those reactions then help develop this emotional stance that I have, this depression, or this consistent anger, or this consistent impatience, or this consistent grief. And then all of a sudden, it's 20 years later, I'm still feeling this way. But if I look back, if I can look back, and again, this is the hard part because not everyone's ready to look back. And so this is where we discern, are we going to go there or not? But if you're sitting in this room, you're probably ready because that's why you're here. We look back and we can see how our thought patterns have led into our emotions and created this filter of life that we've been perceiving life through. And then all of a sudden you meet a Zen teacher, you see someone like that, kind of like what woke me up when I was young. And then you're seeing a human that doesn't have these filters anymore. And they just look at life neutrally. And all of a sudden, you might take that deep breath. Holy shit, that's an option? Because here's the issue with the self-help industry. A lot of it tries to get you to do self-love when you hate yourself. And what I'm teaching you is just be neutral, because self-love is another direction of the pendulum swing that also is an illusion. When I look in the mirror, I don't see it. I just see life. I don't see anything. I'm not like, well, look at you. No. When I was a kid, I would say these awful things to myself in the mirror. And then I started to try and get to peace by saying all these positive things in the mirror. But it never really worked because all those positives were just trying to cover up the negative. And now with the Living Peace teachings and the Zen teachings, when we look in the mirror, we just see a human. We just see a manifestation of our personality. That's not right, not wrong, not good, not bad. It just is. And then I say to myself, okay, I have this vessel, I have this body, it's neutral. What am I going to do with it today? Am I going to do things that help cultivate peace? for myself and others? Or am I going to bang that drum of pain? Or am I going to give in to my compulsions and addictions for some temporary satisfaction? That's a big one. Everything's temporary satisfaction. So all these things, this excitement we're chasing, this pleasure we're chasing, all of it's temporary. And so I look in that mirror and I see neutrality, the art of neutrality. And I think that is such a softer direction to go towards versus when you're struggling with so much self-loathing or self-judgment than trying to get all the way to self-love. No wonder this shit doesn't work. Does that make sense? Because it's fucking hard. You can't get here from here. You have to get to the middle first, which is neutrality. And then if you want to go into narcissism, that's fine. No judgment. But does that make sense? Because guess what? Maybe you do get from here to here and like you work so hard and you get that perfect body. But then what happens next? You're going to start aging, right? That perfect body, that perfect moment. Remember I started earlier today. I'm like, oh, I went to the gym, was doing all this cool stuff, and it doesn't even last that long, right? And so it's like all these things that we're trying to chase. It could be a physicality thing. It can be a money thing. It could be a relationship thing. It can even be having a child. But then guess what? That child starts to grow up and it goes through different phases and you don't like all the phases. And so all of these things that we're experiencing, are so temporary. And we get so attached to them. We attach our emotions to them. And that's why, here's the fun like boom moment. That's why we're perpetually unhappy or perpetually stressed. Because we're attaching to these external stimulations that have no ground in consistency. And so if we're constantly, every single day attached to these things that are always changing, then it's very easy to be dissatisfied every single day, unhappy every single day, stressed out every single day. But then if we accept that everything is temporary and that these external stimuli will not bring us lasting happiness, not bring us lasting satisfaction, not bring us lasting pleasure or excitement, then peace occurs. And you look at life and you say, well, today this happened and it sucks. And then the next day you look at life and say, well, this happened and that was cool. And the next day this happens, that was stressful. And the next day this happens, well, that was pleasurable. You're not attaching to the pleasure. You're not attaching to the suffering. You're just watching and observing. And you recognize that what's happening inside your body, the world around you can be a chaos shitstorm. But this is your inner temple. And that's why meditation and mindfulness practice are so damn important. Because it creates that balance between the mind and the heart. And when those two are in unity, boy howdy, you're unstoppable. Because you're not getting lost in self-judgments or judgments towards others. You're not getting lost in discrimination mindset. You're not getting lost in the ego. You are this serene observer of life. And whatever happens to your body, you don't get offended by it because you're not attached to your body. If you're like super in the whole like I love myself phase or going down that road of that so super empowerment, people can still offend you. You know, because that is still this waxing, waning situation. But when you're neutral and you recognize that I won't be here that much longer, so I might as well just, even when it's an unhappy day, I'm going to choose happiness. Even when this relationship didn't work out, I'm still going to show up and be present for other people. When you start, ninth tenet, when you start letting go of yourself, magic happens. And that's the one thing, the biggest thing that's missing here in the Western mindset. If you go to the Eastern countries, if you go to India, you're going to notice a lot of individuals that already naturally start to understand this. And I'm not saying that those countries are better off because of it, but you'll notice that here in America, it's fascinating that we have so much, but our like happiness level is very low. And our bitchiness is very high. We gripe about every little thing. Everything can set us off. And then we have this like illusion that our way is the best way. And then we project it onto everyone else. Spiritually, politically, religiously, culturally. We'll even go into other cultures and try to change it up because we think we know what's best. No. But my invitation to all of us here today, I have not even looked at this damn thing. I'm so sorry. My invitation for all of us today is to start just doing that on a small level in your life. With your kids, with your family, with anyone you might be dating or in a relationship with, married to, friends, community members, peers, colleagues, doesn't matter what, your animals, I don't care. Just learn to look at things more neutrally. You know, even with our animals, they're not with us forever, and it's very sad. But if we're always focused on that one thing, hot damn, we can't enjoy the present moment when they are with us. So I'm going to read a quote from a student of mine from years ago that I actually put into the Living Peace book. And it always, I don't know, I just love it because it cracks me up. So I would give my students the mantra, I am peace. I am peace. I meditated a lot on that phrase you gave us last week. It seems to have a very different connotation than I am at peace or I am peaceful or even I feel at peace. I've tried substituting words for peace, like I am happy or I am human or I am love. It appears that you were teaching me that peace is a state of being that is not conditional upon other people's situations or the environment. This is not an easy thing that you're asking me, Reverend Rick W. And so him and his family were big participants in the first church I started. And his daughter was actually my first Jedi Padawan. I think she started when she was about 14. And it was just this beautiful, beautiful becoming because the whole family took the Zen training. And so it's very true that I am peace is so much different than I am at peace or I feel peace. I am peace. It's asking us to embody it in every living moment of our breathing, waking life. And I know this is one of the hardest things that we'll ever do, isn't it? Shit, Alaric. But breathe that in. Let me take a step back. So peace becomes possible when we cease to let our emotions be swayed by the conditions in the outside world. Peace becomes possible when we cease to let our emotions be swayed by the conditions in the outside world. And then underneath that, I talked about detachment and unattachment, which is a huge part of the Living Peace book. So detachment is apathy or aloofness toward other people. Unattachment acknowledges and honors other people while choosing not to let them influence your emotional well-being. Detached means I don't care, while unattached means I care, although I'm not going to alter my emotional state because of your emotions, words, or actions. So when you're detached, you're just like, you really are still attached. You're just like, I don't care, la, 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 la. You know, you just like push it away. But when you think about it, you get pissed off. So you just don't think about it. Unattached is I can fully show up and look at the situation, talk to this person. I can feel my emotions, maybe awful, but I honor that I'm being triggered by this, and I honor that it's because of my attachment and my thoughts to this. And so I'm choosing through mindfulness, through peace practices, to unattach so that I can hold space and recognize that just because this external person, situation, or thing is not going as I want it to, I can still honor it and I can still choose peace. I can still choose patience. I can still choose kindness. Do you see how everything here is an action? I can still choose to speak with kindness. I can still choose to have patience. I can still choose to show up and be honest and be vulnerable and be kind and compassionate. What we're not talking about here is just this philosophy that's just up here in the mind. We're talking about literal action-oriented things you can do every single day of your life. And you're either reacting or you're responding. Every time you're reacting, you're repeating the same shit. Every time you take that step back and you're responding, you're paving a new lifestyle. You're paving a new way. You're paving a new relationship. You're paving a new ... So now going back to our self-created realities of our emotions. Does everyone understand how thought leads to behavior? And then behavior leads to emotional recreation every single day of your life? And now do we understand the importance of mindfulness and meditation, why that is so crucial? Because without mindfulness and meditation, you will never be self-aware enough to catch those pesky little thoughts that are going every which direction and then leading to the reactions that changes your behavior, that then leads to the emotions. And so last night I was having this epiphany. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Buddha, Krishna, I need to teach more meditation. I need to, it would be beneficial for me. Need is a judgment. It would be beneficial for me to have like maybe once a month, a Saturday workshop that we just really go into self-awareness meditation. Because over the years, for the past 10 years teaching this people, you know, there's always that struggle. Who's meditated today? Half the room. And then a week later, who's meditated today? Like 20% of the room. And so that's so crucial, and why a lot of Buddhist traditions, such as Zen, make meditation the utmost, most important thing. Because if you don't meditate, it's very difficult to be mindful. And if you don't have that mindfulness, you can't catch those thoughts that then turn into beliefs, that then turn into those delusions of separation, that make you feel separate from the world, that then turn into behavior that is self-harming or harming towards others, that then turn into an everyday lifestyle of stress, of grief, of depression, of anxiety, of addiction. All these things the Buddha taught goes back to the mind. Does that make sense? And that is why Western psychology and Eastern psychology don't always overlap. Because in Western psychology, a lot of it's validating, self-empowerment, self-worth, self-love. But you're just trying to shift that pendulum swing. While in Eastern psychology, it's like, you don't need any of that shit. Just let it go. Let the self go. All of your issues are stemming from your attachment to self. Write that down. All of my issues stem from my attachment to self, my attachment to my body, my attachment to my identity, my attachment to who I think I am towards other people, my attachment towards other people of who they think I am. Does that make sense? And every time you think about this stuff, you judge yourself or you judge someone else. Every unhappy person I've met, every single person that's struggled with any form of like depression, addiction, anxiety, stress, all of it stems from judgment. Every single one of them, everything that they had in common, the one thing that they all had in common was that they're incredibly judgmental towards other people or themselves, or both. It's a little sandwich. Judgment over here, judgment over there. I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. Oh, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. I hate everything. No, it just, you know, it can go in any direction. Self-judgment, external judgment. But every single person I met with, it always stems back to that, including myself. Think about that in your own life. Think about the times you've been more judgmental. Didn't feel good, did it? Think about the times you released judgment. Felt a little better, didn't it? It's that simple. Just let it go. And so the entirety of everything we're doing is helping you let it go, because our ego does, that's the last thing it wants to do. Can't remember who said this quote, but it was, enlightenment is the ego's greatest disappointment. Enlightenment is the ego's greatest disappointment. So it's like everything you're trying to do to get to that state of self-actualization, it threatens the ego that makes you grasp even harder. The three aspects of ego: push, pull, hold tight. And so it's this constant battle that our job is to help reconcile and realize that there is no threat. So I'm going to conclude this talk, and then we'll go into the rest next week, because I always like to split it up. Next week, I'm going to really go into the practice of emotional wave surfing that really helps you understand how to really maintain that equilibrium even when there's all this hot emotion or cold emotion. We don't discriminate. But as Andrew-san was saying earlier in the book, a very key factor is everyone is doing the best they can with what they know. Everyone is doing the best they can with what they know. So the last thing I want, my attachment, the last thing I want is for any of you to go home today and be like, oh, I'm just not doing enough, or this is too hard, or you just start judging yourself more because you recognize that you're creating your reality. And then by recognizing that you're creating a reality, then you might feel guilt for creating a shitty reality that hurts you. You're like, oh God, oh. And it hurts. It's hard. When you fully take responsibility for your emotions and your reality, it can be very painful. And then you beat yourself up over it. And so we don't want that. Guilt is not going to help you. It will keep you in the pain. And so recognize that even days when I react, or even days when I give into the temptation or the addiction, that's fine. Because there's no right or wrong about it, but there is peace or pain about it. And so you suffered enough. If you give in to something that causes you pain, that is suffering enough. Don't give yourself more by judging it. Just neutralize it. How I help people heal from addiction, and how I've seen many other counselors and therapists and coaches help people heal from addiction, is the number one thing they say is stop judging it. And when you completely stop judging yourself every time you take that hit, or every time you go into that, or you repeat that pattern, what's fascinating is that the guilt releases, and then you start to feel better, and then you stop craving it as much. It is crazy. It is crazy when you completely remove all judgment. It helps to unify the mind and the body, and you no longer have as much of the impulse to go to addictive tendencies or react in the same way. Because a lot of times you're going to that addiction to take the edge off of the edge that you created in your mind of separation, because you're judging yourself or judging other people, and you remove the judgment, there's no separation there, and all of a sudden you don't need something to take the edge off because there's no more edge. It doesn't happen for everyone, but I have seen amazing, incredible results for people with this. Not only with my practice, but also with other people's practice. So do you kind of understand a little bit more of this whole judgment, discriminating mindset that we have, and how it is in direct reflection of our emotional state? Good. Oh, I could take a breath now. Yes, absolutely.
You raised the point before about like neural pathways.
Yeah.
And you just have to think about it as water running in our arroyos, or soon to be canyons, and it's just like if you do keep just sending the same kind of thought, that's the same way that you carve out.
Yeah.
If you get your mind to split off, you create a new neural pathway, and it happens through repetition.
Absolutely. Repetition. But we have to understand it. And I think that's a big piece a lot of people don't understand, is they do these positive affirmations, right? But if you don't understand really what's happening behind the scenes, it's not always enough to get you there. Because you just say, I love my life, I love my life, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. But understanding that there's still that self to release, and that's the cause of the pain. So those neural pathways, I love it. Thank you for bringing that up. It is these little pathways that carve these mountains and these canyons. And so are you, here, we'll end on this. Are you directing the flow of your life or not? Write that down. Am I directing the flow of my life or not? And I can tell whether or not I'm directing the flow by paying attention to my thought patterns. That's a hot damn nugget. Am I directing the flow of my life or not? And I could tell whether or not I'm directing that flow based upon my thought patterns. Hashtag hot damn moment. Let's take a breath. So I'm going to talk to the listeners at home. Hi, thank you for joining me today. And so definitely, for those of you who are watching, anytime you're watching this, please be sure to watch next week's post, which if you're watching it when we're filming this, it'll be another week. And for those of you who are watching this in the future, they'll both be available. So be sure to look for part 2 so you can get the full practice on how to really master those emotions. And for any of you who want to donate, I will put a link down below, because we're trying to build a monastery and a Zen retreat center. And so all the monies definitely help support that dream. Thank you for joining in. And now we're going to go back to the live audience.